Thanks so much for tuning in to the Scaling People podcast. I'm your host, Rasika Rajagopalan, and today we are so lucky to be chatting with Casey Wu, 5-time CFO, COO, and now CEO and founder of Operators Guild, where he connects and up-levels over 900 operators across multiple disciplines. He has formerly served as global head of strategic finance at WeWork. He served as the CFO at Landing. He's an investor. He's writing a book. I mean, what hasn't he done? Casey is one of the most high-energy people I know, and so this should be a fun one. Casey, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Love it. Given your experience as an investor, an operator, and former CFO, I thought we could get into some of the real tactical stuff around headcount planning and how to think about headcount in periods of growth versus profitability. So perhaps we can start there. I've heard things like, don't invest in incremental headcount unless your business is growing 20 to 30%. What do you recommend where, we're more focused on profitable growth now? How should people leaders and businesses think about adding incremental headcount in today's environment?
Yeah, I mean, this can be approached in many ways, so I apologize if it's kind of in a random order. I think one is what I've learned through a lot of turnarounds or even the crazy days of WeWork, which is the opposite when it went sky high and then we all left and then it obviously settled, is that you generally can do a lot more than you think with less. Mm-hmm. Like, that's just something to remember. I'm not going to use like X or Twitter. It's like, don't get me wrong, it was a big deal, but he slashed like 70, 80%, or whatever it was. And don't get me wrong, that impacted, but they're still alive, right? So it Sure. tells you that set a higher bar than you think for each hire. As high as I thought I did, I could have been higher. Okay, so that's one. It's more important to have highly engaged top talent than it is a bunch. Okay. In terms of planning, another rule I have learned through the years is generally what happens is startups get very extreme. They'll either go, oh my God, downsize, tight, right? And then all the emails and Slacks go through all the people, and it's like tight. Or it's like go, we just raised money, go.
Right.
The point is kind of like a meditative namaste thing. It's like, it's in the middle. Mm. When you're cutting like crazy, be a little more thoughtful. Be a little less rash. And especially if you're growing like crazy, peel it back a notch in terms of speed. Okay, so that's just, these are general frameworks because every company's gonna be very different. But my point is, anytime it's like go crazy or versus like soft, it's generally too much one way or the other. And what happens is you overcompensate. Mm-hmm. It's like a steering wheel. If you turn too hard to the right, you're gonna turn too hard to the left. Whereas when you're driving, what are you doing? You're doing little things, right, left. That's exactly what it is. It's a little faster, a little slower, a little faster, a little slower. The other thing is, it's always easier to not hire than to fire. Mm-hmm. Right? So just being a little bit slower, and this goes back to my first point, being tighter. In terms of profitability and growth, every stage of a company is very different of what they should be optimizing for. Mm-hmm. One mistake people make is they think they have product market fit. Mm. So then they go crazy with salespeople. Mm-hmm. This is the whole LTV CAC. Like if your LTV CAC is, something like 3 or more, invest in sales, right? Because it's basically, can you cover the cost of the salesperson? Mm-hmm. You're not going to get to profitability if you're premature. So very commonly, and it's hard, to be like, we got product market fit, hire the sales team, and all of a sudden the sales team comes and like, actually, we just ran out of leads. Mm-hmm. Boom, LTV CAC just plummet, and then you're not profitable and you start laying off.
Right.
So I think there is a world of, before you go pushing the gas on sales or go to market, really, really make sure there's enough depth in the ocean to go after. Enough product market fit.
Yeah.
Before then, lean and super tight. I wrote a post that got a little controversy, but the 18-month fundraise cycle is dead. Velocity and speed, micro pivoting is now kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. So do less with more, test faster with less money if you're early, Does it work? Keep going, but it's micro pivots.
Right.
Rather than raise 10 million and go one direction, it's raise 2, micro pivot, so everything is lean and mean until you get to product market fit, then start hitting the gas. And even then, if you think you need 100%, notch it to 85%. You got to give yourself that middle room rather than right and left swings.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my goodness, so many pieces in there. I want to kind of dig into each of them. The first is your point around you can do more with less. I think with AI, we've obviously started to see that more and more. One of the trends I've seen is this idea of the Great Flattening, which is this idea that middle management's getting cut out as a result of AI-driven advancements and this focus on profitable growth. And so I'm just curious whether you think that's a trend or something that we think will continue through the next year as companies are thinking of ways that they can be more conservative when it comes to headcount.
I think there's no question operating margins should and will expand. Profit margins. Meaning, I think you can generate more gross profit per cost of employee over time. So in terms of team size, yes, I think what you could have done with 10 accountants, you can do with 8, 7, or 6 now. No different than anything that has leverage in a machine. I think that's, to me, it's undisputable. Even the people who say, AI doesn't replace, but it helps, well, great. If it helps, in theory, it should. Another thing is you hire slower, right? The need to hire the next person is just a little bit less. So 100%, I think that is the trend. Flattening, I think it's more mix shift. So the first shift is going to be instead of 10 people, you need 7. Okay, so that's going to happen as the pie gets more dense in terms of output. But then the next thing is the shift of the types of people. For example, a lot of bookkeeping is getting done now by machines. So less bookkeepers and more prompt engineers, right? So it just becomes, so there's still gonna be a number of people that you need, but it's the mix shift into what they do. And specifically, it's gonna be more what I would call multi-disciplined or orthogonal. That's what Operators Guild does a lot. I'm not saying this because I'm biased. I'm saying it because I've seen the growth of this community. The generalists, air quote, are becoming more valuable and apt than specialists. So, and you think what an AI agent is, it needs a manager. Right. It needs someone managing multiple. One AI agent is for go-to-market. One AI agent is for this. Multidisciplinary people are the best suited to manage them all. As compared to every single AI agent has a manager, it's possible, but soon it's the multidimensional that has more of a mix, and specialists become less of a mix. Yeah. In that sense, it's flattening. Is there's less people, so that there's that flattening, but it's really orthogonal, cross-functional is going to be the higher mix.
Yeah, I think especially as the pace of business evolves more quickly, what you could have done, in a week, you can now do in days and hours. I think the multidisciplinary skill set becomes even more relevant because the skills that you need are going to become a little bit harder to predict, so you're going to have to look farther out. And so I think that's a good segue to this other theme that you brought up, which is it's much easier to not hire than it is to fire. So one challenge when thinking about how to roll out your headcount planning process with your CFO is how much friction do you want to put into the process to deliberately make it slow so that people really think about what they need. And, sometimes you wait a month or two and, the need kind of resolves itself versus making it fast-paced enough to support the business through periods of aggressive growth. So when putting together that headcount process like that, how do you think about that with your head of people?
So you're saying specifically when you really do need to go fast?
Yeah, when you're or you need to, let's say, you're pursuing a new vertical and you want to add more heads in order to see that through and bring in more revenue. How do you kind of quickly adapt and say, okay, we need to build this thing, let's add more people, versus deliberately putting some friction into your headcount process and approval process so that, you have those checks and balances?
I think when I hear of a new project, I think of things in milestones. So if you get to this milestone, it unlocks the next milestone. So the negotiation with the team is, I will fund milestone number 1, and you go as fast as you can. So the first milestone could be, we want to launch in London. Okay, so what's the minimum milestone to see if we should go to milestone 2? It could be a customer, or like, do we have a happy customer? So you establish success at an MVP level, and then you fund it and you get out of their way. So it's like speed but chunked. You can go as fast as you want up to this point, and you do not get more money until you come back with success. So that allows people to like be free to go to the next thing, as compared to just banana peels the whole way.
Sure.
It's less banana peels and it's more unlocks. So you need 10 million. Okay, I'm going to give you 1 million to get to milestone 1. The minute you get there, we unlock 2 more million to get to milestone 2.
Yeah.
And then of course, if you want to go really fast, you assume that we will unlock. So the people team, et cetera, can start to assume that in 2 weeks it will be unlocked, and then we are already starting to post the job descriptions already. So there's definitely a parallel processing where you can't just be like, I'm not doing anything until the day it's unlocked, but you see trends. The other way I'm saying this is you need to have insights, rapid insights. You can't wait like a month to be like, how did we do?
Sure.
You're like, okay, it's been a week. Where's it trending? Where's it trending? Where's it trending? So there's a lot of skate to the puck, and if it's trending in the right direction, you start gearing up in parallel for milestone 2 or the next one. So that is the art of moving fluid and fast without stunting.
Yeah. And I think it goes back to your multidisciplinary point as well, because even if you bring somebody in and you're like, okay, we'll see whether they hit milestone 1. Let's say that takes 6 months. Let's say they don't. That now you still have that person that you kind of have to figure out what to do with. And so assuming you hire them full time, like that's where I think really hiring people that have multiple skill sets where you can now kind of plug them into something else that now you're trying to see whether you can hit milestone 1 prevents the situation where you're constantly, needing to let people go and eliminate roles and things of that nature. So, in general, people are generally the largest line item on your P&L. And so I'm just curious how you build a strong partnership with your chief people officer. What are you looking for in the people leaders that you partner with? What drives success in the collaboration between these two functions?
I think it goes without saying, but people and finance are literally intertwined. Like it's obvious if you've ever spoken to a CFO and head of people. There's a reason why early stage companies, a lot of people in recruiting report to finance. It makes total sense. So in that sense, I'm going to state the obvious, but and if I use the analogy of a human body, the functions are organs. So heart is sales or whatever, and it focuses on a function, engineering, marketing. People, legal, and finance are the arteries or the nervous system. We're not any one organ. Think about who we serve, it's the functions. Right? What are the arteries and nervous? It services all the organs, right? The organs do their job and we feed them and nutrient them. It's no different. We are basically, and the bigger the organs get, the bigger we get. So when you think about that analogy, we are cross-functional. So number one, strong partnership is to be successful cross-functional, you have to have a business-first mindset. So in the Operators Guild, what we teach is the people that are, the difference between operators and operations. Operators think business first. For example, there's a whole joke, if you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. For us, we're a tool belt. What do we need? What's broken? Oh, you need legal for that. Oh, actually, you need a customer success person for that. Even though I'm finance, everything I think about is how do I use finance to solve it? So if people and finance have a partnership of business first, you will make decisions that are better for the company rather than we must use people, or we got to hire to solve this, or we got to fire to solve this, or we got to have more snacks in the kitchen to solve it. No. So that's number one, is just a business first partnership. The other is, it goes the same with, someone asked me this for CROs. It's a little different with people, but basically HR and finance, there's kind of like two initial impressions that people get when they enter a company. Number one is that they're the police force. They're the enforcers. They're the principal's office.
Right.
The second is they are partners, enablers, empowering. So I think a great partnership is one, we got to be business first when I talk to my chief people officer. We got to think that way, make decisions that way. The second is we are customer service for the employees. You can't have the people department being Dr. No and the finance being enablers, right? And then from there, like every relationship, it's trust. If the CPO wants to build a great relationship with the CFO, it's like every other human on earth. Find out immediately what they care about. For example, a CFO could care about being good at their forecasts and not being surprised. Okay, well then, 3 days later, say, hey, I thought about a way, from the people field to help you forecast better or to give you more visibility, right? Solve people's problems. That develops trust.
Right.
From there, the key thing about finance and people is talking about the confidential stuff. It's no different than any type of like, can I trust this person with sensitive information, and who's the first person I consult with, right?
Yep.
These two need to be consulted with very early, and it's all about trust. Otherwise, it's I tell them something, it goes straight to somewhere else. We got to solve problems together, and it's very confidential. So I actually think the people in finance departments naturally get along pretty well.
Yeah, I completely agree on the understanding the business side. I think a lot of times the people teams, you get this reputation for being a cost center because you're buying all the snacks, you're bringing in headcount. I remember one example in a past life where business was not doing well. We're thinking about maybe do we need to do reductions, whatever. But because our team was really knowledgeable about how the business makes money and where revenue was coming in, we actually decided to add a bunch of incremental headcount in this one area of the business that could be much more of a revenue generator. We were able to kind of do that. Business was able to survive, pivoted a little bit in terms of what we were focusing on, but avoided needing to, cut a bunch of costs elsewhere because we were able to bring in and invest in this other side of the business. So I think had the people team been more of like this, order taker, we're just kind of, going to facilitate some of the things you tell us to do versus being able to have that eye and be able to partner. I think those are the examples where, as a HR department, you're actually able to generate revenue, expand margin rather than, focus on kind of cutting costs constantly. And so I think with that, I'm just curious as a CFO, when you're working with your people leader to make investments, even on things like, annual retreats or benefits, perks, we've obviously talked about headcount. What types of metrics are interesting to you to kind of compel you to want to invest in a cash-strained environment? Like I've heard, if our ARR by employee goes up, then it was worth it. Or if our retention goes up, it was worth it. But like, how do you really do that item to item?
I don't think it should be item to item. I think it should be holistic and trending. None of this I think is that novel, but I do think it's first principles. I think the engagement survey is very important. Why they like working where they work, and what keeps them there, and what repels them. What are the things that they don't like? That's a really important survey that is generally pretty consistent. Whatever it is, I love the mission, but I think that the culture sucks. Like whatever it is, that's your roadmap as it relates to talent. In terms of metrics, retention. I think it's pretty clear when you got a churn problem. I don't need to preach to you, but that's massive costs. To bring them in and then to fire them and to replace them so it's the whole the bad hire is the most costly hire, right? So, or it's not bad, but it didn't fit. So retention, I watched that. So are the tenures getting longer and longer? So that's in terms of like happiness, stay. Okay. Engagement's really important for productivity and the whole culture thing, right? This all does go back to what I like to put as gross profit per employee, not revenue. At the end of the day, gross profit is what goes to pay the payroll.
Right.
Revenue can be very tricky depending on the margins.
Sure.
Gross profit is your profit to pay everyone. Now, be careful though, when you're early, there is no high gross profit to employee, right? So don't use metrics that are not right for the stage. If the company's a toddler, use toddler metrics. If it's an adult, use adult metrics, right? So when you are starting to get profitable and the goal is to be more profitable, then you got to keep the budget really tight on gross profit per employee, and you got to work in the budget. Like if the goal is that. If the goal is actually not to be more profitable, but to start growing, to reinvest, well, then it's going to be like sales efficiency. Right? Sales efficiency is sales labor, right? Basically.
Yeah.
So it's a very specific type of, if something's working, what do we put into it? Or what I would call the non-variable or less variable, like finance and people are semi-variable. I want to see efficiency there. I want to see those areas should have natural revenue per employee, gross per employee lift. Sales may not because you're investing, right? So you separate that. Sales should be going down in the beginning because you're hiring people before they sell.
Yeah.
Accounting should be leveraged.
Right.
Like what do you mean? Like, do we need more accountants? Or it'd be great if we didn't. Use AI.
Sure.
So that's another way is efficiency by function, as long as it makes sense. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's gross profit per employee. It's very simple. That's how you get profit. That's how you get EBITDA. Like that's it.
Totally. But it does sound like to a degree you recognize it is part art, part science. You can't kind of just every single thing. You kind of look at the body as a whole and where things are signaling, and have you made kind of the right investments, and you might have to, it might be some trial and error. You cut, one program because things are going really well and you feel you're overinvested, but then you realize that without that, you're going to kind of incur a host of whole new problems.
Yeah, and I think to add some clarification, you're right. It's not some pure science, but what it is there's ebbs and flows. So for example, when you're going to say, you know what, we're going to make a very concerted effort to hire, for the next 4 months, our metrics are going to go backward, right? Because we're investing. However, we're going to watch it, and it needs to go back up.
Right.
Until we hit the gas again.
Sure,
right?
Sure.
So this goes back to milestone-y, is we are intentionally knowing that churn's going to go up because we're releasing bad customers and whatever it is. We're going to London, so there's no revenue on top of that. So it's okay when metrics go backward, but that it should be time boxed and that it should reverse. The issue, what I'm trying to say is people excuse themselves for metrics going backward for too long.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
We just go too far in the wrong direction without saying, you know what, we got to call it.
Yep.
So it's all fast.
Yeah, you need to have those mile markers.
Yeah, but the overall trend needs to go the right way. Overall retention should be better. Overall engagement should be better. Overall gross profit employees should be better. But it's the mini in-betweens that you allow for flex.
Yeah, definitely. I want to kind of pull back on the point you talked about earlier around funding rounds, growing tighter and potentially being smaller because with less resources, companies are able to showcase a lot of progress. And so, I'd love to dig a little bit deeper on that. Do you think that benefits the investor a little bit more? Does it benefit the founder a little bit more? Like, how are these dynamics going to continue to play out over the next year?
I think it used to be when tech started, if you had a good engineer and a good product idea, that was good enough. Because your competition wasn't that much. Then it became, great, you have a good product, your tech is pretty good, but now you need a good sales team. Right? Like, because we both have good products, well then whoever has the better sales team wins. And then, so that's like, we have a SaaS product that beats non-SaaS. Sell it. And you have Asana and all these amazing, and then we're in a new world. That new world you talked about it, Great Flattening is one, is I think technology is starting to become semi-commoditized. The reason why is, I'm going to call it this nuclear technology called AI, is being accessed by everyone because they opened it up to everyone. You can tap into ChatGPT for air quote $20 a month. Never before that I'm aware of was SaaS technology or whatever you're developing freely opened up, pretty much, not freely, but like for cheap. Does that make sense?
Sure. Yeah.
I build my technology, I'm not sharing it with you.
Sure.
Now, small countries and big countries have the best weapons to use that analogy. Okay, so the war is different. Business is war. It's just a different type of thing, right? It used to be the biggest players that are well-funded had all the best technology and could beat you. Now everyone's got air quote LLM power or ChatGPT power or whatever it is. What I'm trying to say is what is going to differentiate, I think, in the next phase is distribution more so than ever. We have so many awesome solutions to the same problem because it's so fast to be able to create a startup now. Whoever's the best sales go-to-market is going to get the edge, right? Who cares if you have a product if no one pays for it? But whoever can get it to pay, that's the next, you're good. And then the other one is velocity. The word research and development, development means take some time, figure it out, come back.
Sure.
See if you have something. I think it's research and product now.
Yeah.
Product is iterating so fast. By the time you pivot, it's already the product has already iterated. I'm not even researching too much, if that makes any sense. So what's happening is this 18-month fundraise cycle, in theory, you can chop it up into 3, 6,
Sure.
6, 6.
Sure.
Instead of giving me 3 million for 18 months, give me 1. Iterate. Are we going in the right direction? Is it working? So you don't need to dilute, and it's much more efficient. And then in 6 months, oh my God, you got 1 client, or you got great. Now give me another 1 million. And so so I think it's better overall for capital efficiency.
Yeah.
The dollar can go a lot farther, less risk.
Sure.
I think it makes it harder for investors because the speed at which you have to micro raise, stay on top of people in a weird way is just a lot more.
Yeah.
Right? I think it's going to be harder for companies to win. Competition's up.
Yeah.
So much, everyone's got money. You've got money, I've got money. So the cost of acquiring talent's going to go up. And by the way, the best talent now, as we mentioned, is getting less and less.
Right.
It's all the generalists, and there's not that many of them.
Sure.
Right? You don't need as much specialists, so to speak. So then the fight for that talent is going to get harder.
Yeah.
On the flip side, offset is companies that make it, I think will be explosive in terms of how much they make.
Yeah.
So much faster, so efficient, non-diluted, compounding profit. They can swoop up all the talent. So the winners are going to be really big, I think.
Yeah.
Like any situation where competitions are. So that's really the dynamic, but it's velocity and distribution.
Yeah. Interesting.
Is going to be the who's going to win.
Yeah. In that model, I do wonder how many false negatives may occur where I'm sure you've been in a situation where, an idea didn't work until, your last couple months of runway, and then suddenly something hit, and then you were able to kind of turn the flywheel a little bit and get a little bit more cash at that point. And so in this model where you're getting funding, in such quick turns, you really cannot miss a beat, because if you miss that beat, it's potentially over at that point.
Yes, you're right. I think, though, part of the deal is it takes so little now to move to the next iteration that to make up that example, if I raised $1 million for 6 months, in theory, I only need 500,000. So you have 500,000 of buffer. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So you have more buffer now.
You still got more buffer, but you can do it in quicker cycles. Instead of hiring 5 people, you can hire 3. So it kind of adjusts.
Makes up for itself.
But I know what you mean. Like, it's also safer just to raise 3 up front. But there's consequences to that. There's much higher. So in that sense, it's better for investors. They get to see things as they go. Whereas I give you 3 million, that's it.
Yeah.
If you're not going, but if I give you 1, I can give you 3 later when it's more de-risked.
Yeah.
So
Definitely.
There's puts and takes, but I think the big takeaway message is speed.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to wrap, going back to this notion of the Operators Guild, what motivated you to start it. You've also talked a lot about the role of the operator shifting over the last, few years. We're needing more generalists. And so, just wanted to get a little bit more from you around why did you start it? And as people are, thinking about hiring more operators into their businesses, what does that really mean in terms of hiring these generalists, and how do we nurture these types of skill sets when we already have so many specialists on our teams?
The Operators Guild is right now currently 1,000 of the most elite multidisciplinary operators in tech across 20 chapters. So that's for those who are not familiar with it. It was accidentally started completely organically and has grown organically because there was a need. Anything that grows organically 100x there's a need. Oh, and it's a paid community, right? So there really is a screening gate. What has happened over the last 10 years is, I call it the rise of special forces in business. It used to be business was bigger companies, Amazon, Walmart, corporate, in terms of top talent going there. So if you talk to the Stanford grad, what are their choices generally? Lawyer, doctor, engineer, big corporate, more academics, Wall Street, McKinsey consulting. Notice I didn't say early stage startup. Startups used to be a hobby, this thing that Northern Californians did. No, it's like a profession now. So what's happening with Operators Guild is very talented people that was in consulting or was in Wall Street, they love to build. These professions are transaction and advisory. So we left. And we went to this thing called Series A companies and Series B companies. And what we've realized is there's a lot of people out there that are lost in their jobs. They're like, yeah, I'm on the right track because it's prestigious and it makes money or whatever, but I'm not happy. It's because they're artists. That sounds weird. Early stage entrepreneurs and builders love impact. They're impatient. They have a low tolerance for boredom. They don't like thankless jobs. They want to feel important and have ownership. And they're very optimistic. And they love working with others. We are a breed. If you haven't found out that's your breed, maybe now it's time. Who fits us really well are fast-growing early-stage startups. Never before in human history has there been $400 billion or something like that put into the last 10 or 15 years into early stage. So what's happening in this world is multidisciplinary is what's needed at early stage. Specialists and functions are more necessary at later stage. Now with AI, it's becoming even more extreme. So my professional mission now is to help all the multidisciplinary artists that would rather duke it out at early stage with 2-year tenures rather than 15 years at IBM, because they love it. And as Elon Musk says, oh, you know what I do every day? I eat glass. And I love it. No, the love it part I added. But he's like, yeah, I eat glass. Startups are like eating glass. But you and I both know we love it.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying is so, and we love it because we are multidisciplined and we like doing many different things and being a part of something that we have impact. That has now been created as an asset class or as a business class that has never in history been created. So I call it the special forces, Navy SEALs, Green Berets. They're all people that are like, I don't want to drive a tank per se. I don't want to be a specialist. So what Navy SEALs are elite generalists. Some know how to shoot, some are medics, but at the end of the day, they just are generalists. That's what we are. And with you have a people discipline, I have a finance discipline. But we're pretty much dropped into situations and we just have to figure the F out. That's what Special Forces does. Now business has that because now we have early stage.
Yeah.
Just like they have Vietnam War when things were small, Special Forces was created. So long way of saying multidisciplinary operators as a profession is here to stay. And it's no longer just a drop out of school, B Mark Zuckerberg thing.
Totally, totally. Well, I love everything you're doing with that. Casey, this was such an interesting conversation with so many actionable takeaways. And I think the role of the people leader is becoming more and more strategic. And while the people function is sometimes considered as a cost center, as we were talking about before, I think a lot of the nuggets you provided give people leaders a lot of insight into how they can actually continue to drive margin, grow revenue through the investments that they make in partnership with their finance leadership. So thank you so much for shedding some light on that, and loved picking your brain. Until next time.
Thanks for having me. Great questions.